Imagine building a machine to haul coal down a mountain and then accidentally inventing the world's first thrill ride when people started paying money to ride your death cart for fun. That is exactly what happened in 1800s Pennsylvania. To understand how we got today's perfect loop-de-loops, we have to go all the way back to the runaway minecarts with absolutely zero brakes. But here's the thing. That coal cart isn't even where this madness begins. Because before America turned hauling rocks into a business model, an entire empire was already launching human beings down giant walls of ice for fun, and they were absolutely loving it. Welcome to Russia. It's the 1600s. It's cold. It's the kind of cold that makes your soul consider leaving your body. And the Russian people, blessed with roughly 9 months of winter and nothing to do, made a decision. If the whole country's going to be frozen solid anyway, we might as well weaponize it. So they built mountains. Not real mountains. Fake ones! Massive wooden towers, some of them 70 to 80 feet tall, which is about the height of a 7-story building. Then they coated the entire steep front slope in water and let it freeze into a sheet of solid, glassy ice. Congratulations. You have just built a vertical slip and slide of pure doom. And what did they slide down on? Safety equipment? A padded, engineered vehicle with a nice little harness? Absolutely not, buddy. You got a block of ice with a bit of straw thrown on top, so your entire backside didn't get frostbite on the way down. That was it. That was the ride. You climb a rickety staircase to the top of a 7-story ice tower, you sit on a frozen brick, and you pray. There were no seat belts. There were no brakes. There was no please keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle. There was just you, gravity, and the cold, hard laws of physics. You launched down that slope at genuinely terrifying speeds, then shot across a long icy runway at the bottom, hopefully slowing down before you turned into a human bowling ball aimed at the crowd. And people adored this, even the royalty. Catherine the Great herself was a massive fan of these ice slides. She loved them so much, she had fancy private versions built on her own royal grounds. When the actual Empress of Russia is personally obsessed with your terrifying ice launch machine, you know the thing has officially gone mainstream. These slides were such an enormous deal that they earned a name that literally stuck to this day. In France, in Spain, in Italy, and a whole bunch of other countries, they still don't call it a roller coaster. They call it a Russian mountain. Montagne Russe, Montana Russa. An entire global industry named after some bored, freezing people who decided that plummeting down an ice cliff was a perfectly reasonable Tuesday afternoon. But then the French got involved, and the French had a problem. See, the French took one look at these Russian ice mountains and said, "We absolutely need this. This is incredible. This is the future." But there was one tiny, minor, catastrophic issue. France does not stay frozen. You cannot run an ice slide when the ice keeps rudely turning back into water. It is genuinely hard to sell tickets to a puddle. So the French did what humans do best when faced with a fun activity that keeps trying to melt. They engineered a workaround. Instead of ice, they bolted wheels onto the sleds. And instead of a random frozen slope, they built an actual wooden track for those wheels to roll on. In the early 1800s, rides popped up around Paris, like the Russian mountains at Belleville, that used little wheel cars instead of ice blocks. This is a genuinely huge leap. Because now, for the first time, the ride worked in any weather and the car was actually attached to the track. One French ride even locked the wheels into a groove channel, so the cart physically couldn't yeet itself off the side into the crowd. Revolutionary. Someone finally invented the wild concept of maybe the vehicle should stay on the ride. Groundbreaking work. Give that man a medal. So now we have wheels. We have tracks. We have an entire European fascination with sliding downhill really, really fast. The stage is set. And this, at long last, is where our coal-hauling maniacs in Pennsylvania come sliding into the story. Deep in the mountains of Pennsylvania, in a town called Mauch Chunk, there was a very serious, very unfun problem. There was a whole lot of coal at the top of a mountain, and it needed to get to the bottom. And dragging heavy coal down a steep mountain by hand, all day, every day, is a fantastic way to get absolutely nobody on Earth to work for you. So in the 1820s, they built a solution. A gravity railroad. And the idea was beautifully, gloriously lazy. You load the coal into little rail cars at the top of the mountain. You give them a gentle nudge, and then you just let gravity do the entire job for free. The full coal cars would go screaming down the mountainside on a wooden track, reach the bottom, and then get slowly hauled back up by mules to do it all over again. Let me be crystal clear about what this actually was. This was a bunch of heavy carts flying down a mountainside with no engine, no real brakes, powered by nothing but the raw, unpaid enthusiasm of gravity. It was efficient, it was cheap, and it was, completely by accident, absolutely thrilling. Because here is where it gets stupid in the best possible way. Word got around town that this coal railroad went really fast, and regular people started showing up and asking a very dangerous question. Hey, can I ride that? And the coal company, staring at a crowd of tourists waving money at them, made the single greatest business decision of the century. They said, sure. For a small fee, you too can strap into our industrial coal delivery death cart and ride it straight down a mountain for fun. And people went completely feral for it. The coal hauling operation slowly transformed into a full-blown tourist attraction called the Mauch Chunk Switchback Railway. And I am not exaggerating how big this thing got. For a while, this repurposed coal cart was one of the most popular tourist destinations in the entire United States, reportedly second only to Niagara Falls. Let that sink in for a second. People were skipping an actual natural wonder of the world to go ride a converted mining machine. That, right there, is the raw power of going downhill fast. So the secret was officially out. You could make a legitimate fortune selling people the pure, uncut sensation of almost dying. And that is the exact moment a man named Lamarcus Adna Thompson decided to change the entire game forever. Lamarcus looked at these gravity rides and had a vision. Why make people trek all the way out to a mountain in Pennsylvania when you could bring the thrill directly to the crowds? So in 1884, he built his very own gravity ride at the busiest, most chaotic circus of humanity in America at the time. Coney Island, New York. He called it the Switchback Railway. And by today's standards, it was adorable, genuinely precious. It crept along at a blistering top speed of about 6 miles per hour. That is it. You could power walk faster than the so-called thrill ride. The track was just a couple of gentle wooden hills. You would climb up a tower, sit sideways on a bench facing out at the ocean, and then gently coast down the little bumps to a second tower on the other end. And when you reached the far tower, the ride somehow got even more low-tech. There was no automatic system to bring you back. A dude just physically walked over and shoved your car onto the return track, and you coasted back to where you started. That was the whole experience. And it cost a single nickel. Now, 6 miles an hour of sideways bench sitting sounds like the least exciting thing on the entire planet. But to people in 1884 who had never felt anything remotely like it, this was pure electricity shot straight into the brain. Thompson was reportedly raking in hundreds of dollars a day, back when a nickel was a real chunk of your money. He didn't just build a ride, he built a money printer. And every other inventor in America immediately smelled that cash. The copycats came fast, and honestly, they made the whole thing way better. One guy figured out you could bend the track into a continuous oval loop, so the ride actually returned to the start all on its own. No more human pushes required. Another inventor added a genius upgrade that we still use on basically every coaster to this day. The chain lift hill. That satisfying clank, clank, clank as your cart gets dragged up to the top of that first big drop. Yeah. Somebody invented that specifically so we could finally stop paying guys to shove carts around by hand. So now, the roller coaster is evolving fast. It's on a real track. It loops back on its own. It hauls itself up the hill. Everything is going great. Which of course meant it was the perfect time for humanity to take this way too far. Because somebody looked at this nice, gentle, family-friendly little ride and thought, you know what this needs? A full vertical loop. Let's flip these people completely upside down. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, so much. So much could go wrong. In 1895, a ride called the Flip Flap Railway showed up at Coney Island, and it earned the honor of being one of the first coasters to flip riders through a full loop. There was just one small, spine-shattering design flaw. The loop was a perfect circle. Now, if you don't know why that's a problem, let me break it down real simple. A perfect circle loop forces your body through an absolutely brutal amount of G-force at the very bottom. We are talking numbers that could reportedly hit around 12 Gs. For reference, fighter pilots start blacking out around 9. So this cheerful little fun ride was slamming everyday people, dressed in their Sunday best, with more raw force than a military fighter jet. The result? Whiplash, neck injuries. A whole lot of people climbed off that ride feeling like they'd just survived a minor car accident. Turns out that violently snapping a human neck sideways is not the good kind of thrilling. Who could have possibly guessed? The loop looked incredibly cool, sure, but it treated your spine like a personal enemy. Eventually, smarter engineers rolled in and fixed it by changing the actual shape of the loop. Instead of a perfect circle, they stretched it out into more of a teardrop shape. This spread the forces out gradually, so your body wasn't getting completely nuked all at once. And that teardropish loop is the exact shape they still use today, all because the first version was busy trying to rearrange people's vertebrae. But even the fixed loops had a catch. They were expensive, they were terrifying, and only a small handful of people could ride at a time. As pure spectacle, loops were amazing. As a way to actually make money, they were kind of a flop. So for a while, the wild upside-down stuff quietly faded out, and coaster builders went back to focusing on the thing that actually paid the bills, going fast and getting that big, glorious air. And that brings us to the real hero of this entire story. A man you have absolutely never heard of, who basically made every modern roller coaster possible. His name was John Miller. Here was the fundamental issue haunting all these old coasters. The cars just sat on top of the track. And when your car is simply resting on the rails, physics has a nasty little habit. Go too fast, hit a hill too hard, and your cart wants to fly straight up off the track and become a very expensive, very screaming projectile. This is, as you might imagine, a genuinely bad feature for a machine packed full of humans. So John Miller invented a system of extra wheels that gripped the track from underneath. Now the car was locked onto the rails from the top and the bottom at the same time. It physically could not fly off. And this one boring little upgrade changed absolutely everything. Because the moment engineers knew the cars couldn't escape, they got greedy. Bigger drops, steeper hills, faster speeds. That stomach-lifting feeling of floating right out of your seat, the airtime we all secretly chase, that's only safe because Miller's wheels are quietly making sure you don't actually launch yourself into low Earth orbit. This unlocked the golden age of the roller coaster in the 1920s, when America went completely feral, building thousands of these towering wooden monsters everywhere you looked. Bigger, faster, more insane. The entire country was obsessed. And then, right on cue, the party got crushed. The Great Depression rolled in, nobody had a spare nickel for thrills anymore, and roller coasters started getting torn down left and right. For years after that, the roller coaster was basically on life support. Until the real comeback finally arrived, from a place you would never in a million years expect. A cartoon mouse. In the 1950s, theme parks got completely reinvented, and engineers finally ditched the creaky old wooden tracks for a brand new material. Smooth, hollow steel tube. And steel track was a total game changer. It was smoother, it was stronger, and you could bend it into shapes that would have snapped a wooden coaster clean in half. Suddenly, loops came roaring back, but this time done properly. Corkscrews, twists, inversions that didn't actively try to murder your neck. And that humble steel tube is the direct ancestor of the absolute skyscraping monsters we build today. Coasters that launch you from 0 to over 100 miles an hour in a couple of seconds. Towers that stand taller than actual buildings. Drops so steep they go past straight down and into full-blown betrayal of physics. So the next time you're strapped into a 400-foot steel behemoth, slowly clanking up that lift hill, quietly questioning every single decision that led you to this exact moment, take a second to appreciate the beautiful chaos behind it all. This entire multi-billion-dollar industry, this glorious pinnacle of engineering, exists for one reason and one reason only. Some bored, freezing Russians decided that sledding down a giant ice tower on a frozen brick was a great time. Some French people bolted wheels onto it because their ice kept melting. And some coal miners in Pennsylvania accidentally realized that the machine they built to move rocks was way, way more profitable when it was filled with paying humans who wanted to feel like they were about to die. We took a frozen death slide and a runaway coal cart and turned them into the single greatest thrill on Earth. Honestly, incredible work, everybody. Truly. Now please, keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle at all times.